I do have a beginner's level qualification in Reiki. Here we go.
But I'm proud of that.
And I'm kind of proud of it. Right. Pseudoscience you want to be true, and I have to read this out because it's really brilliant, and it'll take a second. I think homeopathy. Now, hear me out. Hear us out. Due to the marvels of the water cycle, the water you drink has been sloshed around in just about every type of ailment and malady in the world. So, therefore, using the principle of like cures like and dilution improves efficacy, water will cure everything of all physical and mental ill health, and I think that would be grand. And I think that's amazing. I've never thought about that before. If homeopathy, we'd all be freaking water by now.
Yeah, be great.
Good thinking. What do you have? Give Sharia well. What?
Okay, so, yeah. So thanks.
What the fuck is wrong with me?
Not enough water.
That is absolutely fine, Mark. I'm okay.
Homeopathic Sharia.
Okay, so thanks to Brad for inviting me here, and Cherie. Thanks, Cherie, who's probably in the kitchen. So I'm Catherine, and I think I've met just about all of you now. So I am a science teacher as part of my day job, or as my day job, but I also do a few other things involving effective altruism. So that's kind of coming to you as an effective altruism advocate. So I'm part of a trust called the Effective Altruism New Zealand Charitable Trust, and we're trying to spread the ideas and help New Zealanders to be able to donate to charities that are really effective. Give them the information, try and make it more charities tax deductible as well. And I also do work for Students for High Impact Charity, which tries to spread the ideas of effective altruism, which is all about doing good to high school students when hopefully they're young and idealistic and they're not so cynical as you guys are right now. And so that they can do good in their lives as well. So, effective altruism really is looking at charity and other methods of doing good with a real skeptical eye. So it's using scientific evidence and reason. And it kind of founded with a philosopher called Peter Singer, who's an Australian philosopher, but there was also another philosopher called William MacAskill, who's from Scotland, who is really influential in it. I mean, it sounds like kind of not that controversial. It's like, let's do good stuff and let's make sure what we're doing is good. But for some reason, a lot of people don't use evidence when they're trying to do good. So that's what we're trying to fix. That's right. So in this talk, we will be giving out some money to a charity. And I'm sorry, the Gorilla Skeptics is not one of the charities. I was thinking about Society for Health-Based, Science-Based Healthcare, but they didn't get the cut, so I'm sorry yet. But
I don't know what we do with it anyway.
So we have $1,000 to give away to the charity that you guys choose. I'm only allowing you to choose between 4 charities, so don't get too excited. And that $1,000 was partly donated by New Zealand Skeptics, woo, yay us, and partly donated by the Life You Can Save, which is another organisation that is promoting effective giving. And so they've done some research on this kind of what they call a giving game, which is what I'm going to do with you guys, and it seems like it's an effective way of hopefully getting you guys to change your mind about giving, or giving you a bit more information. Cool, so that's coming up soon, but first we have a quiz. So this is the social programs quiz. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a few social programs that various organisations and governments have run, and you guys get to work out whether they have improved people's lives, so they've been a positive impact, or whether they've had a negative impact and made things worse, or whether they've had no impact at all. Well, according to the studies. So all of these social programs have had a slew of studies done on them, and they've also had a meta-analysis done. So most of you guys are geeky enough to know about meta-analyses, but in case you're not quite geeky enough, that's basically an analysis of the analyses, so it's weighing up all of the evidence from those analyses and kind of trying to get an idea of it, just in general how effective this thing is. So, to do this quiz, you guys need to stand up. This is a nasty elimination quiz. Okay. So, I know some of you guys probably can't see the screen, but I'll describe the quizzes and the social programs anyway. So, first social program is preventative home visits. So with this social program, they're for elderly people living alone, and they have somebody, a healthcare professional that comes to their house, gives them health checkups, trains them into how to prevent things like falls, so that they don't fall and hurt themselves, and gives them recommendations to any health or social kind of programs that might be useful. So, the studies looked at whether this prevented death. So, or, premature death, obviously everyone dies eventually. But whether these home visits reduce the chances that these elderly people would die. So if you think that these preventative home visits will reduce the chance of death, I want you to put your hands up. If you think it increased the chance of death, like this actually was really bad and made people die, put your arms down. And if you think it had no measured effect, cross your arms. Okay. So hands up if you think it's good, hands down if it's bad. If there's no measured effect, then cross your arms. Okay. The answer is there was no effect. So if you were crossing your arms, stay standing, please. Everybody else sit down. Whoa. Oh, you guys are good at this already. Okay. Oh, this is more than a third. Okay. Okay, next one. So next one is restorative justice conferencing. So with this, you take offenders, and they get charged through the courts as per normal, but those offenders also have a meeting with the victims of their crime, and also there's a trained moderator that facilitates this discussion. And they discuss about what the harms of the crime were, and try to work out some way that the offender can kind of put things right, I guess. So the question is, does it reduce the frequency of the reoffending? So are these offenders more or less likely to commit more crimes as a result of this restorative justice conferencing? So if you think they're going to...
Is that the same crime or just crimes in general?
Crime in general, yeah. So I think this is not a New Zealand study. Yeah. So some of these studies are from several different countries in a meta-analysis. So. Okay. So if you think it reduced the reoffending rate, then put your hands up. If you think it decreased the reoffending rate, if it increased the reoffending rate, it makes them more likely to commit crimes, put your hands down. So that's bad. If you think there was no measured effect, put you across your arms. Okay, great. So the answer is, that was positive. It reduced offending. So, hands up and you can stay up. Oh, crikey. Okay, we're getting down. So this has seemed actually really, really useful. There was a study done in the UK that said that for every £1 spent on restorative justice conferencing, it saved 14 pounds of harm, or 14 pounds of, I guess, taxpayer money spent on justice and policing and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. So well done, you guys. Okay, next one. This one's called Scared Straight. So this... what they do is they take delinquent kids. This is was a really popular, still actually is running, a program in America, and they take delinquent kids from an area and take them to prison. Now there's a variety of things, there's a bunch of different programs like this. Sometimes they're really aggro with them and they have the prisoners and the prison guards yelling at them and saying, you know, turn your life around, otherwise it'll be awful. And other ones are like non-confrontational, when they just have a tour and sit in the cell and have a few kind of frank conversations. The effects seem to be pretty similar. So, question is, does this reduce the rate of offending in the future for these kids, or does it? So reducing the rate is hands up, increasing the rate, so it makes things worse, hands down, or no measurable effect, cross your arms. Okay, so the answer is it increased the rate of crime. So if your hands are down, that's great. You guys get a chocolate because you win. Okay, thanks. So you guys can sit down now. That's awesome. So that's the last one. So Scared Straight possibly was the worst social program ever invented. People doing the study suggest that for every $1 spent on Scared Straight, cost society, the societal cost would be $200. So just immensely awful. And yet it was sort of run in lots of different states around America. So why did they do this? Well, partly there was a reality TV show about it, so, you know, of course it's great because it's on a reality TV show. The other reason was that when people first did it, the badly designed preliminary studies looked actually positive. So these kids would go to the prison and they were trying to be good about this. They knew how much crime these kids did before in the 6 months leading up to the visit, and then they measured how much crime these did in the 6 months after the visit. And the crime rates did drop on average for these kids. But they never, well, initially they didn't look at or didn't consider what would have happened otherwise. So when they did look at that, they could basically a randomized controlled trial on Scared Straight. So again, you guys are geeks, you guys know what randomized controlled trials are. So the idea is you get a whole bunch of kids that are delinquent kids, you randomly assign them to either the treatment group where they go to the prison, or the control group where he's sitting at home looking sad, I guess. So maybe he's out offending, I'm not sure. And then they measure the offending rates for the two groups after this lot had been in the prison. So it did turn out that the guys, the kids who went to the prison, their offending rate dropped a little bit, but the control group dropped a huge amount. And basically this is believed to be an example of regression to the mean. So basically if you take the very worst kids in the town, just statistically they're not going to stay the very worst kids in the town because their offending rates fluctuate up and down. So they might be really bad this month, but maybe something changes in their life and there's some other kingpin of the, delinquent kid society in that town. So that was quite interesting, and there was a lack of understanding of statistics and the scientific method that led to all of this harm being done by that program. Right. So those were just 3 examples, but there was a study done by the Laura and John Arnold Foundation that tried to find out how widespread crappy social programs are, and it was pretty huge. They reckoned that more than 75% of social programs being rolled out in the United States at least had no measurable effect. They just didn't help at all. That works for charities as well. So the programs that charities do, nearly all of them have not been carefully studied, and out of the ones that have been carefully studied, very little effect or very little improvement in the quality of life of the people that they're trying to help. So I apologise for people who have learnt about play pumps before, but this is my favourite example, so you guys will just have to sit and listen, I'm sorry. So one of my favourite examples of a charity is Play Pumps International. And as you can see here, it's a kids' merry-go-round. And the idea is the kids spin on the merry-go-round, and the energy of the spinning pumps water up from an underground reservoir, a well, and pumps the water up into an overhead tank. And there's a diagram there. So they're spinning the merry-go-round, water gets pumped up to an overhead tank. Now, this was created in the 1990s by a couple of people from South Africa, and it was a massive hit on the development kind of circles. They had celebrity endorsements such as Laura Bush, who was First Lady at the time, Bill Clinton, the rapper Jay-Z did a whole bunch of concerts for play pumps, and they got many tens of millions of dollars. I haven't quite managed to find out exactly how much. And they still are running as well. But as some of you guys might realise, it's not actually a very good idea. So they rolled out all of these play pumps for a while, and then in 2007, UNICEF investigated it and said, well, what's going on with this? And they were pretty damning. So the kids look like they're having fun, but the fun thing about regular merry-go-rounds is you give it a push and it spins freely. So you give it a wee push and you leap on, it's fun. But the energy of the spinning merry-go-round is used to pump the water up. It's basic physics. So what happens, you give the merry-go-round a push and it very quickly stops. So you basically have to have at least one kid, in this case it looks like there's a couple pushing it around, pushing at all times. So the kids might play with it for a few minutes and they'll be like, well, finished with that. So in that case, so the kids didn't like playing with it. So in some of the villages where they put this, they had to pay the kids to push it around. And it was kind of problematic as well, because some of the kids didn't actually want to be on there. Like some of them got nauseous and vomited, some of them fell off and broke limbs, and it was quite bad. And so in most places, it was the older woman of the village that had to end up pushing it around. So not only was this really uncomfortable because it's set for a height of a child, but really degrading as well. Anyway, not good. And they broke down a lot. The local people didn't know how to fix it. It's like a black box in there. They also often the villages that they put them in, they weren't even asked whether they wanted it, and often they had an old pump already. They already had the well, and they had an old hand pump. And those hand pumps, they didn't break down hardly at all. They pumped about 5 times as much water per hour than a play pump, and they cost about a quarter of the price. So play pumps got masses of aid, and they made people's life worse. And it could have made their life so much better if that aid was done in a really thoughtful, careful, science-based way. So it is pretty sad. And part of the reason is that with charities, normal economic principles just don't apply. I mean, I know that's the same in healthcare as well, as it happens. But the charities that succeed are the charities that are good at getting your money. They're not the charities that are good at spending your money. Every charity's website or their glossy brochures can say, oh, look at this lovely smiling child, and you did this, and give us more money. But for a lot of charities, you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. So good intentions are definitely not enough, and we've talked about whether these quacks believe what they're doing. And I think, my guess is that in the charitable sector, there's loads of people that believe what they're doing. Certainly the play pumps people seem to believe in what they're doing. But good intentions are totally not enough. We have to look at the data to know that we're doing good. And also we should be looking at the data to know how effective the things are. So what we actually do want, because, well, I want anyway, I've got a limited amount of funds that I can donate to a charity and a limited amount of time that I can volunteer for organisations. I want to do the most good I can with that time. So what Effective Altruism is trying to do is try and get data to help work out how much good is it that you're doing. And that's hard because we don't know what good really is, but it can be sort of attempted to be measured. But so, you know, how many children are prevented from dying? That could be one measure. A lot of health economists use disability-adjusted life years. So that's basically like if you have 1 year of healthy life, or if you live for 1 year longer and you're healthy, that counts for one disability-adjusted life year. But maybe you're not healthy and you live for 2 years longer, so maybe that could be one disability-adjusted life year because your quality of life isn't so high. So people try and measure that because it kind of tries to fold in longer life with better quality of life. So whoops. Here we go, here's my next graph. Hey, graphs. So the actual World Bank tried to measure like all the kind of interventions or programs that they were doing to try and improve health in poor countries and developing countries around the world. And they tried to measure it as how much did it cost to extend someone's life or to make their life better. So they've got this graph here has disability adjusted life years per $1,000. So it's a bit hard to see because there's lots of little bars, but basically this is like a bar chart, and it runs from like the least effective program to the least effective program to the most effective program here. And as you can see, these are all sort of things. This might be like antiretrovirals for people with AIDS. This might be distributing condoms so that AIDS doesn't spread so much. This might be deworming kids who have intestinal worms. So they're all kind of little health interventions that people have. So you can see that there's a tail here of very ineffective things. They're probably still good for people, But there is some really, really low-hanging fruit where you can spend a little bit of money, this is like $1,000 US, and you can improve people's lives hugely. So that's like 300 and something just years of healthy life for $1,000, which is just crazy good deal in my opinion. So we definitely want to avoid charities and programs like play pumps and Scared Straight that do harm. But even if we're just looking at ones that we think, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure they're doing good, there is a huge range in cost effectiveness and how much good that does. So if this analysis suggested that the very best health programs can be more than 100 times as effective at reducing disease burden as the average program. So if you donate to like an average World Health charity, you're possibly missing out on 99% of the good that money can do. So I know some people say, oh, I don't have any money to donate to charity. Well, actually, you can donate a whole bunch less than most people do and get a bigger impact. Yeah. So this is just global health interventions in this particular study, and generally with effective altruists community, we kind of value all human beings equally, and that's a value you don't necessarily have to share that. But when you do consider all human beings around the world as equally morally valuable, equally valuable of health, the cost effectiveness differences get quite big when you compare low-income countries to high-income countries as well. So I've got a couple of examples of charities, and it kind of could be a little bit controversial, I guess, I don't know. So this is a beautiful guide dog. Blind Foundation, for example, in New Zealand provides guide dogs for people who need them. Does anyone know how much it costs to train a guide dog? Yeah, about 20, 30, I've seen $40,000 for a guide dog. And that will provide great service for about 9 years. And I don't know, I mean, I can imagine that it's really, really useful and a really great thing. This is Fred Hollow's foundation. Does anyone know how much it costs to cure someone with blindness from Fred Hollow's?
$10 or $20?
About $25. They can either treat trachoma, which is a bacterial infection in a person's eye that blinds them, or cataract surgery for only $25. It's crazy cheap. So you're looking at, over 1,000 times more effective. If you have that value of everybody's, I don't mind if they're in New Zealand or in Tonga or whatever. And I mean, I don't want the blind person to miss out on the guide dog, but I can't provide everything, so I'm going to choose the ones that I think are the most good for the dollars that I am able to spend. Here's a even more stark contrast. We have the Make-A-Wish Foundation in New Zealand. Anyone want to guess? Oh, you guys know what Make-A-Wish is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they have a kid that's sick and they'll give them a day or a week or a holiday of their dreams or something like that. Guess for an average wish in New Zealand, how much that costs? Yeah, you guys are good at this. Yeah, it's about 9,000 for New Zealand. That was the 2014 financial year stats anyway. Yeah, so about 10 grand for a wish. Whereas here's a lovely girl with a malaria net, which is provided by Against Malaria Foundation, which is an international charity. They sleep under the nets, and then the mosquitoes can't come in and give them malaria. The analysis should suggest that on average, $10,000 spent on the Against Malaria Foundation will reduce the mortality of malaria such that there will be 2 less kids dying, 2 fewer kids dying of malaria. So, I mean, that's average. It's not like you put the money in and suddenly miraculously some child stays alive. But on average, that's what the statistics suggest. So you could, for the same amount of money, give one kid an awesome holiday. Like, yay, that's great. Or you could actually stop 2 children from dying of malaria. And that's just the mortality rate. If you spend $10,000 on them, that would reduce other kids getting non-fatal cases of malaria as well. So there's some big differences in charities. Cool. So it's also quite hard, actually, to know which charities are good and which aren't. So in the past, people have tried to look at the overhead ratio, which is like what percentage of the money goes into the program and what percentage goes to what they call overhead. But unfortunately, that overhead is sometimes really useful. Like that overhead might be the research being done to work out how to do their charity better. And also when you're looking at hundreds of times, one charity being hundreds of times more effective than another charity, quibbling about whether the overhead ratio is 10% or 15% is kind of not that important. So thankfully now we do have charity evaluators that focus on effectiveness. They do bring their own values to it. So again, these ones tend to, I'll go back to that. These ones tend to look, well, at least 3 of them treat all humans as pretty much equal. So they concentrate on mostly well, health and poverty. So we've got Give Well, Giving What We Can and the Life You Can Save, and they publish really rigorous analyses of charities. They don't do every single charity because they figure they only have so much time themselves, and I don't need to know what the 100th and the 101th charity is. I want to know what the top few are to know how to donate. There's also an evaluator that concentrates on how best to help animals as well. So, right. What's the next thing I was going to say? Right, I think it's time for our giving game. So, what we have is you guys have to choose between these 4 charities, and I do have bits of paper for you to have a look at. So, I'll introduce the charities, and then Colin's going to give you some paper, and I'll give you some paper with some more information if you want. And then if you just chat to the people next to you and try to work out which one should get you $1,000. So, here are charities. Did mention Against Malaria Foundation. This has been recommended by all 3 of the human charity evaluators. In fact, it's GiveWell's #1 charity. They think that's the cheapest way that people can save lives. So that was like about $5,000, I think, will stop some kid dying of malaria. And also malaria reduction is really good for economic things as well. Various studies have suggested that for every dollar spent on malaria reduction, the GDP of the area goes up between $6 and $12, depending on what study that you look at. Because people are working, and they're not sick, and they're not looking after their family. Yeah?
I just wanted to ask the one
Would you put a
child.
microphone over there?
I just wanted to ask, the one child, is that per annum, per month, per day?
But that's per donation. So $5,000 will mean, because malaria mostly kills kids under 5. So, and a malaria net lasts about 5 years. So, well, depending, but so that basically means that will bring, a kid over. I mean, not one kid, but this is statistical. The mortality rate goes down enough for every. So that's Against Malaria Foundation. It's pretty cool. There's another one that you can choose. This is Give Directly. This was actually founded by people who work in the international aid and were basically sick of all the bureaucracy and the issues caused by aid. And absolutely, there's loads of aid and charity that has been awful and has not helped people's lives. And they said, why don't we just give them the money? Why do we have to have all these staff and people making decisions for them? Let's just give them the money. And this is a very transparent organisation. They do randomised controlled trials on everything. And they have studied, they basically give people in Uganda and Kenya, because they have like really cool cell phone banking systems in those countries, and they find really poor households and say, do you want some money? And they'll give them like $1,000, like more money than they've seen. And they have seen that this actually doesn't make people lazy, it turns out, on average. They often invest it in businesses, or they might put an iron roof on their house instead of a thatched roof, which doesn't require as much maintenance, so that saves them money in the long run. They might buy food, medical expenses. There was one village that all got together, because they often do like a whole village, and they got musical instruments and made a band. And you can go to the Give Directly website and you can listen to the music, it's really cool. But with the randomised controlled trials, they showed that these families had more food over a long period of time, they had more income, their quality of life went up, so they were happier in their lives, and there was no measurable difference in how much they spent money on like alcohol or gambling or tobacco, all the things that you worry about people going and spending money on. So that is Give Directly. That's also recommended by actually 2 out of those 3 charity evaluators. We talked about Fred Holler's foundation as well. So that's recommended by one of those 3 charity evaluators, about $25 to cure somebody of blindness. Pretty amazing. You probably know about this charity already. Now, the final charity to choose from is Innovations for Poverty Action. This doesn't really a charity in the same sense, it's more like a meta-charity. What they do is they run randomised controlled trials about what helps with global poverty and development, and then they go and publish all of that information so that other charities can use it and become more effective. So, there are your choices. So you can kind of gather into little groups, and I've got more information for you to have a look at as well.
Well,
tally, but it actually looks like we have Innovations for Poverty Action being the winner by quite a landslide. So, yay! So $1,000 will be going to them on behalf of us, and they will be using that money to help them conduct more randomised controlled trials and other studies to try and make the world a better place. Rowan.
Did you do a breakdown?
Colin's doing the actual.
Sorry, did you do a breakdown of how the others scored?
Colin's doing counting. Sort of. So it looked like Innovation for Poverty Action was the highest voted one. Give Directly was second.
Yep.
And then,
It's about 25, 11, and...
so 25 for Innovation for Poverty Action, 11 for...
Oh, for Give Directly.
11 for Give Directly, 6 for Fred Hollows,
and 5.
and 5 for Against Malaria Foundation. Awesome, yes.
Do you think this appeals to our biases as skeptics to try and promote research?
Sure, yes. No, I thought that you guys, normally if I'm doing something like that, I don't really do meta charities, but I thought you guys might like it, so, and you did, that's awesome. Cool. Okay, so thank you very much for that. So just to, oops, I'll go back. Just to remind you, it is the charity evaluators that are the places to go, especially GiveWell, which is particularly rigorous if you want to find out like really outstanding giving opportunities that have really good science base. So before I finish though, there's just a couple of myths that I want to talk about. And there are a lot of myths involved in international aid and charity. And one of the myths is that a whole bunch of money goes to these poor countries and nothing ever gets better. It's still awful. And I mean, partly that's because a lot of aid is kind of awful and doesn't really help. But actually, things in many cases are getting better. And I think it's just the bubble of negativity of media, I think maybe that's the problem. So over time, people are getting healthier, they're getting more well-educated. So here's just one graph. And this is child mortality by world region. So this is children dying before the age of 5 from 1960 to, it's only 2012. And you can see that mortality rate, each line is a different area of the world, but the blue, dark blue line is the world. It's just plummeting. Kids are living to become adults at a far higher rate, and they're getting more and more educated, more and more food in their bellies. Things are really getting better. I mean, a lot of that is just general economic development. It's not just aid, but aid and international help has played a role. Things like smallpox, you know, the World Health Organization got convinced to eradicate smallpox, and then they did. It was like the biggest killer. And things like malaria rates have really, really plummeted. There used to be many millions of people dying. In fact, I've got the numbers. So back in 1930, there was about 4 million people die every year of malaria. Now that we're down at 500,000, and it is quickly dropping. So, and that's mostly due to bed nets, but there's other interventions that can be done as well. So things, at least in World Health, I mean, things are getting better, and it is a doable thing. And another myth that people have is, I'm just me, what can I do about it? Like, it's a big, big problem. Anything that I donate or anything that I do is just a drop in the bucket. And I don't really agree with that. And it's because it's not how big the bucket is, it's how big your drop is, how much impact can you have. So here's a graph of the world income distribution. So from the poorest person to the richest person, actually the richest person isn't there, that'd be like through the roof, but you know, I had to truncate the graph. So here's my question for you. Average New Zealand family or average New Zealand household, where do you think you are on this graph? So I'm going to use the pointer since I have one. And you guys can yell out when you think we're at the income for an average New Zealand family. Now,
Top 1%.
no, close. So this graph, it's been scaled to do purchasing power parity. So we know that when we travel overseas, some countries it's more expensive to buy things than other countries. So they've actually accounted for the fact that your money, like for cost of living. So you think top 1%? Well, it's pretty close. So there's the axis there that I've put on. Oh, it's slightly shifted. Oops, sorry. The median income, so this is the middle of the road New Zealand household, earns about 70,000 New Zealand dollars. It's not a lot, but you know, it's okay. Yeah, sorry, this was supposed to shift up, that's my fault. So $70,000 is around here. You know, we're not right at the top if you're a middle of the road New Zealand family, but you're pretty high. So even adjusted for the different costs of living, this is 15 times the median world household income. I mean, it's a tricky thing to kind of measure because, you know, I don't know whether they've corrected for the Auckland housing crisis and all of that sort of stuff. So, you know, I don't want you to think, but I can't live on 1/15 of what I live on. I mean, I realise that. But this just goes to show that we're actually pretty rich, actually. And so people who are down at the bottom, they're living on the equivalent of $2.50 a day or less. That's the World Health Organization's that's the UN's kind of line for extreme poverty as $2.50 New Zealand, or the equivalent. So what we could buy for $2.50 if it was possible to buy, you know, really crappy things. Our food quality is much, much higher, so they can't buy the same quality of food we can. So it's kind of complicated to measure. So your bucket, your drop is going to be huge for some people. Even it might seem a drop in the bucket, it's going to be huge for the families that you're helping. And also, the bucket actually isn't that big. So there was an economist called Jeffrey Sachs who tried to estimate how much it would cost to end extreme poverty. That's, you know, extreme poverty is pretty extreme. But he estimated it would be $175 billion per year over 20 years. It's like, oh my God, that's a huge amount of money, right? But the world donates more than 3 times that amount to charity every year. It's not going to the charities that are going to do the most good. So the evidence suggests, I mean, it's never perfect and, you know, you can always update on your evidence, but the evidence does seem to suggest that we can do this thing. There's people out there that are having unnecessarily dying, unnecessary suffering, and we can do something about it. Maybe not for every single person, but we can make a big difference if we follow the scientific evidence and if we keep updating, seeking out new evidence, and trying to improve upon what we're doing. So there's hope, definitely hope. So that's kind of what effective altruism is all about. But it's not just about donating to charities that help people. There's a whole variety of things that it kind of covers, because it's really about how to do the most good, and there's lots of ways, lots of things that we think are good. So there's a bunch of people who are involved in effectively trying to help animals. So, you know, there's lots of animals who live really crappy lives in factory farms. What can we do about it? And people are doing scientific studies and trying to develop new products so that we don't have so much suffering in factory farms. Also, people are looking at future problems that might come up. So, like, how can we reduce the chances of nuclear war? Well, you know, I don't know, but people are focusing on that. How do we reduce the climate change, especially, you know, the most catastrophic possible things? How do we deal with that? Biodiversity loss, and trying to do it in the most scientific-based way. And using not only your money, donating money, but using your time and your careers to solve some of those problems. So, that's pretty much the end of my talk, but before we do questions, I don't know how much time we have, There is extra stuff that you might want, and I know, giving people a free sample seems dodgy. Like, I want something from you, but it's kind of true though. So the Effective Altruism New Zealand Trust is giving away copies of these books. They're by Will MacAskill, the Scottish philosopher. And I think they're great books, and a few people in the audience. Oh yeah, Ben's got his thumb up, he's read it already. So our hypothesis for our study is that the cost of a book will be, on average, more than paid for by people reading the book going, yeah, I am going to donate to an effective charity. So that's our hypothesis. We don't know if it's true, so we're doing a trial. So it's all evidence-based. So if you want a book, I actually don't, this is my only one at the moment, but there's a big stash ready to get posted out. So if you want a book, I have made a sign-up sheet over there, so you can put your name down. And even if you don't want a book, you can put your name down just to join our mailing list, so you can learn more about effective giving. So that's one of the things. Actually, that's the only thing. Yeah, sign up list and the book. So get the book. I'm not trying to manipulate you with a free sample, honest. Yeah, that's all. Questions? Russell.
So we've got some pretty despicable people in New Zealand, like Brian Tanaka. I'm sorry, I nearly threw up in my mouth there. What's an effective way of convincing his huge congregation that gets huge amounts of money to places where it's frankly just another burden?
I don't know. Let me know if you find out. I don't know, I'm thinking of trying to learn some more psychology and, persuasion techniques and stuff, so I can try and convince people better. I don't know. Sorry, I wish I knew.
The book is fantastic. But how do the ineffective charities respond to this criticism?
I don't think Play Pumps has ever responded. A few sort of slightly less effective charities have responded saying, oh, actually we've got more data and we've done other stuff, like more updating the evidence. There has been a lot of criticism from a group called Charity Navigator, which does basically recommends charities based on their overhead ratio. So they kind of, they went kind of mental and called it defective altruism, and basically said that the whole group was mean. But so they didn't respond well. But yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything from. I don't think Play Pumps or Get Straight or anything have been. I don't even know whether they know about us. Yeah.
The government gives a lot of money to NGOs and various charities. Does the government ask for this sort of scientific evidence of effectiveness?
I mean, they do look at effectiveness a bit.
Especially the ACC.
But from what I can understand, and the little I've talked to a couple of MPs about it, and they kind of say, so much of it is kind of political. Like we kind of, because of our location, we donate a lot more. We try and help Pacific Islands a lot more than Malawi or something like that. Even though Malawi possibly needs the help a little bit more, but it seems like it's like a kind of a bit more of a you scratch, I scratch your back, you scratch our back, kind of sort of folded in there. And so I don't know. But it's actually a pretty small part of our of the money that comes in. So as far as the New Zealand budget, it's less than 1% that goes internationally. So it's pretty small. And that kind of goes for charities as well. Like it's about 9% of charitable donations from New Zealanders goes internationally. Nearly all of it stays in the country. So yeah.
Catherine, is it, it's a crude thing, but is it a rule of thumb that the really big charities are just not going to be as effective as these smaller ones? Because these ones seem to be small good charities, or is that just a
not necessarily. I mean, GiveWell has tried to evaluate some of these really big charities, and Oxfam has come up quite well as far as being moderately transparent and as well as, you know, publishing evidence and stuff like that. But generally, the big charities are like a closed box, and they don't say what they do. They don't publish their effectiveness, and or not enough information for the charities to evaluate them. But I guess it kind of, because something like these really big charities like World Vision, they do loads of different things in loads of different countries. Some of them will probably be on the peak of the effectiveness. Some of their programs are probably outstanding, but probably most of them are in the sort of the flat tail kind of. So I would say you'd be better to go to the ones that have been evaluated, and hopefully this whole movement can bring those charities to become more transparent and more evidence-based, and you know, it'd be good for everybody.
Oh, sorry.
As regarding the ratio of overheads and that, I understand some charities, one I heard of was Save the Children, used to say that they had 100% of your donation goes to a country, partly because they had presumably some of their keen donors were contributing the administration costs and that. Is that still going on, and is that widespread?
Yeah, it does still go on, and I'm not sure the case with Save the Children. It doesn't sit that well with me, but Against Malaria Foundation does that because actually the guy who founded it, he's like independently wealthy. Like he just got, I don't know, in squillions of dollars and went, I'm gonna, I don't know, cure kids of malaria. And so he funds all of the administration just out of his own pocket. But I feel kind of uncomfortable by that because it's not really realistic. And if they folded in how much money he put in, but I mean, I guess he made that decision to say, because it does appeal to some donors, that, you know, it all goes to that. So he's made that calculated decision.
Has convenience ever been kind of studied? Like, I'm girl guiding and selling biscuits, and stood in the train station, people walk past and they buy a packet of biscuits. Like, or if I'm at the checkout and I've got some change and there's a pot, just chuck my money in the pot. Like, but then I won't actively go search for a charity.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is obviously really convenient to just drop a few coins, or yes, I add $1 to my, you know, grocery bill. And it's a bit tricky because I would sort of say, well, you should add the $1 to Against Malaria Foundation or Innovations for Poverty Action. But realistically, most people probably aren't going to just sort of go, oh right, that's right, I said no to the Girl Guide biscuits, so I'm going to then go home and quickly donate. So, I don't know, it certainly is a big thing. I guess a lot of these charities, as I say, are sort of small, the ones that are really effective, and they don't have people door knocking all the time. I think they often rely on evidence-based donors, and that's their marketing strategy, is hoping that more people donate sensibly. So I don't know.
I was wondering.
It should be good.
I was wondering, is lack of transparency prevents people from donating at all, or is it they don't care in general?
I think most people don't care. There was a study done in US donors, and they found that only 15% of donors did any research at all before they donated. Like, that research includes looking at the website. And only 3% did any comparison. Like, they think, oh, should I donate to this charity or this charity, and made kind of a comparison. So my guess is that for most donors, lack of transparency doesn't matter, but I think it should matter because that's how we, you know, we improve the whole kind of charitable industry. Industry is a bad word, but yeah, the whole charitable sector.
My turn. So, going back to one of your points before, when you were doing the Fred Hollows Foundation, you know, in comparison to the
guide dog sort of thing. It's not really a question actually much, it's more just a sort of point of sorts, and it's really just, I think, something else to bring back into the mix. So, sorry, I should actually start by saying, actually, I think it's a great sort of thing, this whole effective altruism. But I guess the point I was just trying to make is that, you know, it's fantastic to be able to help lots of people with, say, something that's a fairly small cost type thing, so the efficiency is really, really good. But you know, I think we also have to make the point too that, you know, say having a cataract operation or something like that for the Restorative Foundation is not going to help somebody who's cortically blind also. So there are still, I think, quite reasonable reasons to be, you know, giving to things that may not seem so efficient, but really have no other sort of obvious ways of actually helping certain individual people.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely true. If you can't get a cataract operation, then, you know, Fred Hollows can't help you. I guess the thing is that you know, there could be a blind person in New Zealand who doesn't have a dog, but there still are thousands of blind people in other countries who I can help for that one person. I mean, hopefully, I mean, already there are a lot of people donating to the Blind Foundation, so my additional donation probably isn't the difference between somebody getting a dog and not. But my hope is that, you know, we deal with all this really low-hanging fruit of interventions so that the most effective thing is giving trained dogs to blind people, or giving a kid a nice holiday. I mean, that would be brilliant when that comes to be the need. Yeah.
I absolutely understand what you're saying. I mean, it really makes a lot of sense. I guess what I'm sort of saying is that I think we should be sort of taking the point of view that there aren't other reasons for giving to charities other than just the most effective use of money as well.
Yeah. So it gets kind of called warm fuzzies. So you can give to charity and you give yourself warm fuzzies, and then but what gives you warm fuzzies is not necessarily the same as the best utility for the world. So I totally see that, and it's not like if giving to a guide dog foundation gives you warm fuzzies. I don't want you to not give yourself warm fuzzies. I mean, that's good. This is good for you. It's good for the blind person and good for the dog. But if you can actually sort of purchase your warm fuzzies separate to your utility things and say, well, you know, IPA, well, actually, I don't feel warm and fuzzy when I donate to them. I don't know, I feel kind of warm and fuzzy when I donate to an IPA, but you can kind of, if you can separate those two functions of charity in your mind, and you can kind of partially give to something that makes you feel good, or partially buy, you know, biscuits from the Girl Guide Foundation because you feel good and they give you a lovely warm smile, and that's great. But try and also do the effective things as well. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Sign up for a book, and actually I've got to say there's little flyers with like the web addresses for the charity evaluators and stuff. They're just over by Craig over there, so please take our books and be part of our experiment. Thank you, Fred.
I feel warm and fuzzy when I drink an IPA as well.